You know, for over a century, military thinkers have been chasing this kind of ghost, the perfect war. A war fought with flawless information, absolute precision, and, well, as little bloodshed as possible. The core idea seems simple, right? Superior technology should lead to a guaranteed victory. But what if that's a really dangerous illusion? Today, we're going to unpack the paradox of control, and we're going to explore why the most advanced military technology in the world doesn't always deliver the win.
So this quote comes from a U.S. Navy officer who served during the Kosovo War. Now, he wasn't on the front lines. He was in a headquarters in Italy, inside what was basically a cleared-out storage closet they nicknamed the rumpus room. For him, war wasn't about guns and mud. It was all about managing data, updating spreadsheets, and building PowerPoint slides that would ultimately decide where bombs would fall. The entire conflict, with all its life and death stakes, was seen through these glowing rectangles.
Because here's the thing. While the picture on the screen might look clean, cheap, and totally controllable, the real-world strikes they lead to are violent, costly, and completely irreversible. And that contrast, that's really the central dilemma of modern warfare. To really get a handle on the problem, we first have to understand the dream of a perfect tech-driven war. And at the heart of this dream is an idea called the technology theory of victory. It's this belief that, hey, if you can see everything and you can hit anything, you can basically remove all the fog and friction from war. You can make victory a predictable outcome, almost like a math problem. And as you can see from this timeline, this is not a new idea, not at all. From a German field marshal way back in 1909, to General Westmoreland in Vietnam, to the Soviets in the 80s, all the way to China's pursuit of AI-driven warfare today. It seems like every new generation of technology inspires a new generation of strategists to believe that this time they can finally perfect the art of war. And this quote from Schlieffen just perfectly captures that seductive promise, doesn't it? A single commander, a modern Alexander, seeing everything, controlling everything, all from a comfy chair. I mean, it's a powerful vision. But as we're about to see, it's also a deeply flawed one. Okay, so we've got the dream. Now, let's see what happens when that dream smacks right into messy human reality. Let's go back to Kosovo in 1999. In headquarters, the war looked like a huge success. Get this, NATO suffered 0 combat deaths. But on the ground, the air campaign that was supposed to last 48 hours dragged on for nearly 3 months, and Serbian forces actually sped up their ethnic cleansing during the war that was meant to stop them. The technology that promised such incredible precision sometimes hit the wrong targets. Sometimes it completely missed the right ones. And sometimes it hit civilians. More than 500 civilians died, caught in strikes that were aimed at things like passenger trains, residential neighborhoods, and even first responders who were rushing to help the victims of an earlier attack. But the single most catastrophic error of the whole campaign was the bombing of the Chinese embassy. Think about this for a second. NATO forces, using the most advanced targeting systems on Earth, planned the strike using an outdated map. The result was a massive international incident that's still shaping geopolitics today. A New York Times article just nailed the problem, calling it an immense error, perfectly packaged. And that's it, right there. The execution was flawless. The bombs hit their mark with incredible precision, but the information they were based on, completely wrong. This is the heart of the paradox. So what explains this huge disconnect? Well, the answer seems to lie in 2 competing ways of thinking about how to fight. One that tries to insulate itself from all the chaos, and another that tries to adapt to it. So on one side, you have insulated practice. This is when an organization trusts its top-down systems and its plans so completely that it becomes, well, insulated from the chaotic reality it's supposed to be controlling. But on the other hand, you've got adaptive practice. This is all about bottom-up learning, user innovation, and being flexible when things go sideways. And this table from the Iraq War gives us a perfect A/B test. In Anbar province, the Navy SEALs were running an isolated strategy. It was highly secretive, relying mostly on technical intelligence to kill or capture specific high-value targets. The Marines, though, they used an adaptive strategy. They went on what they called census patrols just to talk to people, building relationships and gathering real, ground-level intelligence from the local tribes. And while the SEALs were incredibly efficient at their specific mission, it was the Marines' approach, building trust and understanding the human side of things, that ultimately helped turn the tide of the entire conflict in that province. So all this brings us to what might be the ultimate expression of the technology theory of victory, the armed drone. The drone didn't just appear fully formed from some big defense contractor. It actually started with an immigrant engineer tinkering in his garage. Then it was sort of hacked into a weapon by a secretive Air Force unit called Big Safari. It was only rushed into service because of the urgent demands right after 9/11. And since then, it has become this massive institutionalized system. Okay, this is an actual Air Force slide trying to explain the drone kill chain. But just look at that title. Working the seams. I mean, that is a fascinating admission. It basically acknowledges that even in their own perfect-looking cyclical diagram, the real, messy, difficult work happens in the informal gaps between the official steps. And this, of course, leads to a pretty common criticism that remote warfare turns killing into some kind of sterile, detached video game. But the reality, as it turns out, is way more complex. This quote comes from a pilot who flew both F-15 fighter jets in person and Predator drones from a control station thousands of miles away. And he said he found killing with a drone to be more difficult. Why? Well, because drone crews often watch their targets for hours, sometimes even days. They see them with their families, they learn their pattern of life, and it creates this strange, disturbing intimacy that fighter pilots just never experience.
So, what happens over time? The whole system develops what you could call a complexity ratchet. Picture a wrench that only clicks in one direction. Every mistake, like a civilian casualty, and every new innovation, like a new sensor, adds another rule, another procedure. The system never gets simpler. It just gets progressively more layered and complex, which in turn creates all new and unexpected ways for it to fail.
So, where does all this leave us? What does this paradox of control really mean for the future of how wars are fought? Well, that dream is back, and it's bigger than ever. Today, the conversation is all about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and what China calls intelligentized warfare. The promise is exactly the same as it was in 1909. Use technology to replace not just human muscle, but the flawed human mind itself.
All right, so what are the key things to take away here? First, the technology itself is never the whole story. What really matters is the whole messy combination of people, culture, and bureaucracy that's actually using it. Second, being able to hit any target with pinpoint precision doesn't guarantee you're going to achieve your bigger goals. That right there is the paradox of control. And finally, maybe the goal shouldn't be to engineer humans out of the system, but to design systems that empower our unique human ability to adapt and use judgment.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. As we start to hand over more and more control to artificial intelligence, are we finally on the verge of creating that perfect, error-free vision of war? Or are we just building an even more powerful complexity ratchet, inventing faster, more efficient, and more catastrophic ways to be perfectly, precisely wrong?